6 mysteries in history that are unlikely ever to be solved. And before we start, do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so as not to miss new releases. First, what is written in the Voynich manuscript? In 1912, the antiquarian Wilfrid Voynich bought some medieval manuscript from the Jesuit monks in the Italian town of Frascati. A typical manuscript, apparently an alchemical or astronomical treatise, a herbalist, or something like that. Full of images of various plants, constellations, incomprehensible diagrams, and naked women in the water. But there is one small problem. The book is written in an incomprehensible language. It was not spoken in Europe at that time, and in general in the world. Plants drawn in the botanical section are not found anywhere in nature. The stars listed in the astronomical chapters cannot be recognized. Recipes, alchemical compositions, schemes, everything is incomprehensible. The text is abracadabra, which is impossible to read. The alphabet of the book is found only in it, and it is not clear how it correlates with existing languages and whether it correlates at all. However, it was all written by a professional scribe who knew the language. There have been suggestions that the Voynich manuscript is a forgery, but radiocarbon dating indicates that it is, in fact, a 15th century manuscript. Paints, ink, parchment, everything is real, quite authentic. That is, this is not a pseudo-artifact concocted on the knee. In general, the Voynich manuscript has been haunting the minds of historians for more than 100 years, but no one can ever figure out where it came from, by whom it was written, and what this rubbish means in general. By the way, you can look through the pages yourself here, in the Yale Library, in case you understand something. It is not known whether we will find out what it is, an artifact of a civilization that has disappeared without a trace, an encrypted book of a secret witch society, or a book from another dimension where constellations, plants, and architecture are completely different. Or just a joke of a medieval cryptographer who created a meaningless manuscript, although the text in it looks pretty meaningful, to sell to a wealthy connoisseur of magical treatises. Well, or he thus mocked future generations. Second, what was the Call of Cthulhu? In the summer of 1997, the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, recorded an inexplicable phenomenon several times, a low-frequency sound of unclear origin. The phenomenon received the unofficial name bloop from English bulk. At first, it was assumed that a living being published it, but such creatures are still unknown to science. Some acoustic features of bulk indicated this. However, its power and volume far exceeded the capabilities of any blue whales out there unless some incomprehensible phenomena increased the whale's song and expanded its range. It is also possible that it was a cluster of giant squids. NOAA also said that this is the noise of cracking underwater icebergs, a volcano, an earthquake, or an underwater geyser. An interesting coincidence, the American writer Howard Lovecraft's short story, The Call of Cthulhu, tells of a dead god with the head of an octopus who sleeps in the underwater city of R'lyeh in the Pacific Ocean. People worshipping Cthulhu in the novel perform human sacrifices and repeat the spell. In the depths of the waters under R'lyeh, the dead Cthulhu sleeps, waiting in the wings. With the right position of the stars, he will wake up, come out of the ocean, and it is not known what will happen to humanity, but nothing pleasant. Lovecraft accurately indicated the coordinates of the Ancient One's resting place in the novel 47 degrees 09 south latitude, 126 degrees 43 west longitudes. By a strange coincidence, the source of Bulka was located in the same part of the Pacific Ocean as R'lyeh with Cthulhu. Well, Howard was mistaken for a couple of thousand kilometers, with whom it doesn't happen. He is a writer, not a geographer. But now cryptozoologists have a reason to believe that these are not squids or icebergs, but the snoring of the mighty Ancient One. Jokes aside, the source of the phenomenon remains a mystery, and the sound was no longer repeated. Third, who is Jack the Ripper? In the second half of 1888 in London, a mysterious criminal killed 1 after 5 women who were engaged in prostitution in a disadvantaged area of the East End. The newspapers gave him the nickname Jack the Ripper. The maniac dealt with his victims so quickly and imperceptibly that a couple of times, the bodies were found literally a few minutes after he left. To this day, Jack the Ripper remains one of the most mysterious killers in history. Scotland Yard had many suspects, but the murders were never solved. The police received a couple of letters, allegedly written by a maniac, in which he mocked the law enforcement officers. But it is unclear if they belonged to the Ripper or if this is a hoax. There were many guesses who the killer was. There were more than 100 suspects in total. Maybe he is a crazy surgeon who hated prostitutes or an obsessed midwife who believed that with her murders, she cleanses the world of filth. And there is also a crazy theory that Prince Albert Victor himself, Duke of Clarence, the grandson of Queen Victoria, just decided to have fun. Aristocrats often get bored. But after years of prescription, we are unlikely to ever know the truth. Fourth. Where did the crew of the Mary Celeste go? In 1872, a merchant brigantine called the Mary Celeste set sail from New York to Italy. Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife, and 2-year-old daughter, and 7 crew members were on board. They were carrying 1,700 barrels of denatured alcohol for sale. 4 weeks later, the ship drifting aimlessly was discovered by the brig Dei Gracia in the Atlantic Ocean. Not a single person, living or dead, was found on it. Things in the cabins were laid out as if people had just gone out for a short while. No signs of violence, no fire. All the documents were gone except for the ship's log. The sailors' pipes of tobacco and provisions were also lying where they usually were. Everything indicates that the passengers and sailors deliberately left the ship, especially since there was no lifeboat. But what made them do this, why they didn't take anything with them, why they didn't leave notes and abandon the ship's log, remains a mystery. There have been many hypotheses. It was assumed that the crew had to abandon the ship due to an underwater earthquake, or they were afraid of some kind of water tornado, or they were attacked by a giant squid, although it seems far from the gurgling Cthulhu, or something like that. Some even explained everything by the fact that the sailors got drunk on meth and staged a riot, but, judging by the ship's state, they were somehow too intelligent to brawl. However, no one cancelled the mass insanity either. In general, the crew of the Mary Celeste disappeared without a trace, and no one had ever seen him again. And it is still unknown what happened there. Fifth. What happened in the Roanoke colony? There is an island in North Carolina called Roanoke. In 1585, a group of English settlers founded a colony on it. And it began. In the neighborhood of the settlement in the village of Akvakagok lived a tribe of Indians. At first, neutrality was maintained with them, but then the silver cup disappeared from the colonists, and the Native Americans were blamed for this. The British were so upset that they burned the entire village. And this, of course, did not contribute to the friendship of people. After that, misfortune began to haunt the colony. Lack of food and constant attacks by the Indians eventually forced some of the people to return to England. The head of the settlement, John White, went across the Atlantic to bring a new batch of colonists and supplies. He left 90 men, 17 women, and 11 children on Roanoke Island, including his granddaughter Virginia Dare, the first English child born in America. When White and a new team of colonists returned to Roanoke 3 years later, the entire population disappeared without a trace after many difficulties. On the palisade around the village was carved the word Croatoan, the name of a neighboring Indian tribe. And that's all that's left of the colonists. Where they went is still unclear. It is possible that the Indians attacked the village, but no traces of struggle, fire, or destruction were found. Another version, the Indians, seeing the plight of the colonists, offered to leave with them voluntarily, and the British hid in the depths of the mainland and eventually assimilated. More extravagant versions are mass insanity, the sacrifice of the colony's inhabitants by Indians, an attack by unfriendly Spaniards, an epidemic of an unknown disease, relocation to the neighboring island of Hatteras, abduction by aliens from Talkeetna, and other hypotheses. Sixth. How the Dyatlov tourist group died. In January 1959, 10 tourists from the Ural Polytechnic Institute went on a ski trip in the northern Urals. One of the skiers later left the route and returned home, and the remaining 9, including the leader of the group Igor Dyatlov, continued on their way and stopped for the night on the slope of Mount Kalachakal. There they froze to death. To this day, it is not clear how this happened. Something made the tourists jump out of the tents in the middle of the night and leave the camp without clothes and supplies. Down the slope, they tried to make a fire to warm themselves somehow, but they all died from hypothermia. The bodies of 5 were found by the rescue team a month later, and 4 more bodies were found only in May. There were many versions of the death of the Dyatlov group, from 75 to 100. Most likely, the tourists had to leave the camp, running away from an avalanche or storm, but there were no traces of these natural phenomena sufficient to confirm the hypothesis. It was also assumed that a wild animal, such as a connecting rod bear or an elk, attacked the Dyatlov group. Either they became victims of runaway prisoners, faced ball lightning, fell under the influence of infrasound of an unclear nature. Not to mention the aliens, yetis, and sinister KGB agents traditionally mentioned in such cases, who eliminated bystanders of their secret operations. Be that as it may, the accurate picture of what happened remains a mystery. That's all for today. Thanks for watching to the end. Subscribe to the channel, and like this video if you haven't done it yet. Also, turn on notifications on our channel to catch all new videos. Bye.